Welcome to the Heart-Led Business Show, where compassion meets commerce and leaders lead with love. Join your host, Tom Jacobs, as he delves into the insightful conversations with visionary business leaders who defy the status quo, putting humanity first and profit second. From heartfelt strategies to inspiring stories, this podcast is your compass in the world of conscious capitalism. So buckle up and let your heart guide your business journey.
Fun and facts with our glowing guest, the lively luminary, the Wizard of Woo, Meredith Oke. She's the stellar skipper at the helm of the Institute of Applied Quantum Biology, enlightening us Earthlings faster than a comet crossing the cosmos. On this episode of the Heart-Led Business Show, we've dived down the rabbit hole to unfold how her quantum quirkiness is ruffling the fabric of science, ensnarling the sunbeams of success, and carving a charismatic Castellan in the infinite sky of entrepreneurship. Prepare for a pulsating pile of passion as Meredith mesmerizes us with her magnetic musings. Welcome to the show, Meredith.
Thank you, Tom. That is probably the most delightful introduction I have ever had.
I'm really honored to
share
have
with
you
your
here
audience.
as well. The ChatGPT went a little overboard, I think, on the alliteration there, but I think it encapsulates everything that we're going to be talking about today. So I'm really excited to really dive into everything that you're doing
Yeah.
and learning more about your heart-led business. But first, the first question I always ask everybody is, what's your definition of a heart-led business?
A heart-led business is any business that is meaningful to the person who's running it. So I think it would look different for everybody, but if you're following your intuition and your passion, that's what makes it heart-led. Like, is your heart in it? I mean, assuming you're not causing harm in any way or being dishonest in any way, it could really be anything. You know, you could be, I think, a heart-led plumber. You could be whatever it is that you have an expertise in and that you feel good, you want to be doing. But it's like, if you feel that inner intuitive alignment with what you're offering to the world,
Yeah,
then you
I
have a
love
heart-led
that
business.
definition, especially the alignment, your passion and what you're all about as well. That's so accurate. I love it. Thanks for sharing that, your definition of a heart-led business. So tell us a little bit about your heart-led business and what inspired you to start it.
So this business, and it's funny that you asked that because I'm actually in the process of making it this piece of it anyway, making it into a nonprofit, because it came to be out of my own personal health journey. So my background is in coaching and consulting, career coaching, life coaching. I've done all different kinds of things. I worked, as a full-time coach at a business school. I've worked doing maternity leave coaching for women in finance, and I've done life coaching just out of my own business. And so I had quite a, expansive background in coaching, but I came up against a health challenge that led me to do some research around the effects of light on our biology that really helped me, because I was doing all the food and all the supplements and all the meditation and all of the things that all of these wonderful practitioners and, were telling me to do in order to overcome my chronic fatigue, and it wasn't moving the needle. And then I kind of stumbled. Well, I didn't stumble. I went into meditation and asked the universe to show me where I needed to go. And I flashed back to an interview with a doctor who was talking about the importance of light. And so I dove into that, and it was complicated and kind of hard to understand, even though the application of it was very simple. And I just kept thinking to myself, why don't more people know this, right? Like, why don't more people know that reading your phone or your iPad before you go to sleep is like basically toxic? You're poisoning yourself doing that. And why aren't there, and so it became my mission to create an organization that made this information that was quite challenging for me to track down and figure out accessible to more and more people. And so even though it was not my background at all, what the strengths that I brought to the table were like having the vision and understanding that information needs to be accessible if it's ever going to be meaningful to people. And so I found the subject matter experts to teach the science, and I created an organization that brings it to people and makes it a little more straightforward than it
Well,
was.
I can imagine just
Yeah.
bringing in quantum and probably some physics and light and all that would probably deter a lot of people from really diving deep into it and really understanding what it all is and what it does to us as humans. So tell us about kind of that transition into, out of the coaching and into the full business, and then why you're deciding to change it into a nonprofit organization.
I started out, I should say, before I became a coach in my early career, I worked as an entertainment producer and interviewer in the media. And so I did have that background. So I also pulled that piece into it. And I just started interviewing. My husband and I would go on social media and just find anybody who seemed to have a grasp of this knowledge. And I would reach out to them and I just started interviewing them. And I started a little membership where we put all of these interviews and it was like very nerdy just for people. There was a small community of people online who really wanted to know more. As that grew, it became clear to me that like what was really needed, education for practitioners, right? So health coaches or naturopaths or anyone who was seeing clients or patients, there just needed to be a way for them to learn the fundamentals of light and health. Because I'd interviewed so many people, I pulled in the people who were the best teachers and we created a certification. And then we went and we applied to the American Naturopathic Association and got accredited by them. So we weren't just some random internet outfit. We wanted to make sure that that it was clear that we had very, high standards in terms of what we were teaching and what we expected from people. And as it grew, I sort of reached a place with it where I was like, okay, what do you want to be? Because it wasn't really a business. Like doing, online education is definitely a business, but just the way that this was forming and but it wasn't really like a school. And so I went back to the heart-led, right? And it was like, I didn't start this as a way to make money, really. There are much easier ways to make money than teaching the intersection of biology and quantum physics, right? To people who are like, what are you talking about? So I did it because I saw a need and I knew that need wouldn't be filled by the institutional education that exists for at least a decade, if not more, and maybe they would ignore it completely and it would never get taught. So I started it because I saw that need. It's pretty challenging to run, and it just had the feel of community more than business, and it attracts people. People that it attracts, they really are there. They really want to learn from a heart-centered place, right? They're people who want to be of service to their clients. And so I also have a background, doing a lot of high-level volunteer work on the boards at some of the schools my children attended. So I had also pulled that piece in, which was like a vision of a nonprofit educational organization. And I had some understanding of how those work. So I decided to take the certification and turn it into a nonprofit organization. And we're in the process of applying for that as well. And then I kept some pieces of it. There's a membership and a podcast and all that, and that will stay in an LLC. I know that like the theme of this show is like, I'm a heart-led person and I need to make money. And this was really like a huge tension. So this is at the moment, where I've landed and sort of how to work that out while keeping the spirit of what I started.
Absolutely. And
make a
do
living.
you feel like going down the nonprofit or incorporating as a nonprofit, which, I've started a few nonprofits in the theater world when I was doing that, which does not necessarily mean you don't make money in the nonprofit. You still need to make money to fulfill the mission of the nonprofit. So starting the nonprofit as a way of educating others just totally makes sense to me, because that's kind of what nonprofits are, but they also need to make money at some point as well. So what's the business model of the nonprofit in conjunction with the LLC that you have set up? How is that going to work out for you, do you think?
So when I had this idea, I actually wasn't sure, but a lot of those questions got answered based on what nonprofits are legally allowed to do. So, and yes, to your point, a lot of people are like, oh, you're turning into a nonprofit. So like how are you going to live? And I'm like, no, to your point, like a nonprofit, you still bring money in, you still pay people's salaries. It's just, you're not looking to have like a huge profit margin at the end of it. And you're allowed to you're able to take donations and things like that and not be taxed. Yes. So those questions were largely answered, by the legal framework of having a 501c in the United States, which is that you can't have anything that links out on your nonprofit organization. You can't link out to anything where someone else gets paid as a business. So I have a whole piece where it was like a membership and people refer to each other, and we have a practitioner directory so people can find, and that links to their websites to pay for their services. And the lawyer was like, no, none of that can go in. So that made the decision a little easier, because I was like, I don't know, should I put everything in there? Should I not? So the nonprofit is education and research. So the next goal will be funded by the tuition for the certification and from private donations. And then ideally, we'd like to start doing research. There's a ton of research on how harmful circadian dysregulation is. It's implicated in every major chronic illness. There's not a ton of research on how helpful being circadian optimized is, right? Like, people look at the bad effects, but our people are really interested in, like, how do people's labs change? How do people's sleep change once you do these things? So that's the next step. That's going to be really fun.
Like how we can overcome, because, those light sources aren't going to go away. Apple's still going to be making every single year. And, we have TVs, we have lights all around us. So is part of that research figuring out how we're going to live with the light and adapt as humans with it?
That's already something that we look at a lot. So the best way to mitigate, light, basically you want as much as possible the light signal going in your eye to match what's happening outside. So if you've got an iPhone in front of your face while it's dark out, that's a huge mismatch. And so the best way to rectify that is to wear those really funny orange lensed glasses. They actually really well. If you'd like to read before bed, like maybe switch to a book with a lamp that's on a lower setting, as opposed to reading off of an iPad or something like that. So there's lots of ways to mitigate it, because we're not going back. We live in a technology centered world, and there's a lot of benefits to it, like what we're doing right now. I know it's really late for you in your time zone.
Oh no, like we spoke pre-show in our introduction that I do shift my time. It's almost like shift work. So, I'm working from, 8 p.m. until 2 a.m. I'm just told everybody I only work 6 hours a day, which is okay. Right. I tell myself, and maybe I'm lying to myself as well, that I've been able to make that shift because I just sleep a little bit later in the morning. But I got to tell you, not always is my sleep very good either. So and there's a lot of shift workers now as well, in the health and wellness industry, especially, that need to find a way to kind of correct that circadian rhythm. And is that primarily, can you do that through light? Can you change that?
Yes, you can. So shift work is interesting because it's actually listed as a carcinogen by the World Health Organization. That being said, if you understand why, you can definitely mitigate the effects of it. And there's research that's come out recently that shows that it's actually better to do what you're doing, really, where you want to have, if at all possible, to schedule your shift. Some of your sleep overlaps with darkness outside. And so the most detrimental would be to sleep all day and stay up all night. So that phase shifting has really come in. And that's research that came out of I believe the Navy, the U.S. Navy. They started because their sailors were getting all messed up. So they started doing this shifting around. Yeah. And then also, while you are awake, to sort of mitigate the light around you, there are also yellow lensed glasses. And so, because the orange lensed glasses, great to wear in the evening before bed, but they will make you sleepy. Right? Like, so if you're in the middle of your shift, you wouldn't want to do that because it's sending sleepy time signals. But the yellow lens glasses are a nice option for daytime for everybody, and for the time that you're meant to be awake. If you're in front of all the screens and the lights and everything, it'll just it'll detoxify that light a little bit.
Is there a certain frequency of yellow and orange that optimizes that?
Yes. What you were wanting to do is what the glasses do is they actually block the blue frequency, because the blue light in nature is only like from the sun. That's obviously only during the day. And even then, like in the middle of the day, like sunrise and sunset, there's not much blue in the spectrum coming out of the sun. So when your eye is receiving that blue light, it's very stimulating, which it's meant to be, because up until 5 minutes ago, when we invented light bulbs and screens, you never had any other signal except when the sun was out. So what those yellow glasses do is they just minimize it a little bit so that you're not getting that huge you're not getting getting as stimulated as much. I
Oh,
think
that totally
later
makes sense.
it'll be a
Cool.
little
So
easier.
now that we've educated everybody on like therapy, let's go back to the business side of this.
Okay.
The LLC then you have set up for the coaching, I guess, and the interaction and networking and all that with the practitioners. And that I would imagine, this is my little
Yeah.
business brain gears running here, that you could then make donations from the LLC into the 501c3 as well, which makes a lot of sense
could, yeah.
as well as in terms of business and looking at tax advantages as well. So it's very smart. I like that. Very cool.
Totally
So
by
tell us about
accident,
some of
but
the
thank you.
challenges though that have come up, and challenges or triumphs that you found that have come up from having a heart-led business and really kind of leading with that with the heart.
Yeah, I mean, in my personal experience and in my experience as a coach, people who are heart-led, who are really service-oriented, right? And they just want to help other people. We tend to get a little tense around
Of
paid,
course.
right? So I think that tension has been one of the biggest challenges. So a lot of the time when I worked as a coach, there was like an intermediary between me and the client, right? Like I worked for a consulting company or I worked for a school. And so they paid me and I just had this pure client interaction. And there were, I did a lot of work, not as a coach, but sort of as a mentor as well, that was totally unpaid. And I'm like very comfortable in that. Right? Like that's my comfort zone and I feel really good there. And I'm all heart centered. I don't have to think about that. It's all taken care of. All I have to do is send my invoice in or get my paycheck. Right. And so to make this shift as a coach and as starting a business, I had to get okay with people paying money. And what I noticed, and I'm not alone in this because I see all of my practitioner clients doing the same thing, right? Is like we massively over deliver compared to what we're charging in the beginning. And then after a while, we start to burn out. We start to feel, for me, the biggest red flag that we're doing that is you start to resentful of your work, right? And then it's like, what? Okay, what's going on here? It's like I'm doing too much and not getting paid enough. And, I'm going to be totally honest and vulnerable with you, Tom. Like I've put my family in like some very insecure moments because of my unwillingness to really like charge what it's worth. And about a year and a half into the certification, we doubled the price. And I thought I was gonna die, right? But there was no other way to do it. And for the quality of what we offered, and we had different, I had revenue shares with the lead faculty, and I looked at the marketplace and what else was out there and the price point, and I'm like, we need to do this. And my biggest fear was that people were going to get upset. They're going to be like, I can't believe you're charging that. The science, because there's a whole bunch of people, the science should be free. And I'm like, science is free, but if you want it structured into a curriculum and taught by somebody with experience, put out into modules that you can digest, it's not free. And my biggest fear was realized there was a small group of people who had a total tantrum.
Yeah. Did you find a shift in the people that purchased before the price increase and after the price increase in terms of like how serious they were?
I did. And I think that's something that we overlook when we are afraid to charge what we're worth or to charge the experience or the program is worth, right? Like we overlook the fact that there are a lot of people who are like, well, it can't be that good if it's only cost this much. We overlook the fact that people don't commit and invest themselves in the same way they would if they had to really pay money that they felt. Oh, it's like, oh, it's only this, whatever. And so I'm sure, everybody listening to this has probably had that experience on both sides, charging and buying things. So it absolutely up-leveled who showed up. It up-leveled how seriously we took it. Because I think there was a part of me as well that's like, oh, it's just like a hobby. I'm just doing this to be of service. It's not really, I don't really need to make money. I don't, the story. That's probably why you started this. It was a lot of that. And then so raising the price not only up-leveled the person who was attracted to take it and the commitment that they showed up with, it up-leveled my commitment to making it and keeping it really good.
No, it tracks completely with my own struggle with money and raising prices in my fitness business and the others that I've had on the show as well. That I remember, dreading like you did to increase prices with existing clients in my fitness business. And so I had this really nice letter, sent it out to all the clients, and I think it was a 10% price increase just across the board. And, it just laid out the reasons why. And I think once people understand why the price needs to go up, electricity is going up, cost of living. I haven't raised your prices in 5 years, and I think I got one person just was, went off the rails as well. But when you think about it, how do we allow 1% or 0.01% of the population to dictate how we run a business? And yet us as business owners, and especially heart-led business owners, I feel have that huge negative bias that the moment that we get that one negative comment back, it's like, oh, we got to change everything because one person complained. Do you experience that, or am I the only one?
Yes, all the time with everything, right? Like we give feedback forms at the end, right? And it's like everybody's giving like 4 and 5s out of 5 to everything.
Yeah.
And then there's one person who gives a 2. And then I look at the comment and it's like they had some totally unreasonable expectation that was way outside the scope of anything. Yeah. But I still am like, whose comment am I thinking about?
And you probably
that guy.
put way more effort into and energy into that than into all of the great comments that you got. Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
And the same with the pricing, right? Like it's the same thing. It's like I'm thinking about, this small group of very stodgy people who are, that shouldn't cost this and that shouldn't cost that. And it's like, they're never going to buy anyway. They're never going to invest. Like people who think like that don't understand the value of investing your time and your resources and your energy into something of value, into a program of value. They're just out there scanning the world, listening to podcasts endlessly, which is great. I have a podcast, do it. However, right? Like you want serious learning and training, you have to pay for it. And the people who are the most complaining and resentful of the money part aren't the people who are ever going to invest anyway. And yet, so why am I allowing those people to drive my financial choices? It's because I'm heart-led and I feel everything and I feel them. They come into my biofield, they come into my body and I can feel how they're feeling and I want to make it better.
And I think it all comes down to what we prioritize our spending on. And for some people, it's not a high priority. And yet they want to complain that it's too expensive because it's not a high priority for them. And I think us as heart-led business owners, we have to just understand it's not about us. It's about the person that is, upset about the price. Now, with that said, there are people that truly cannot afford some of the services that we offer. And, how do you kind of work with those folks or reconcile, the prices that you charge and still potentially helping those that really cannot afford a service?
Yes, because there are those people. And so we do have an application for tuition assistance, and we do 1 or 2 per cohort. Usually it's with a person who either works for a nonprofit or has a nonprofit type business. I tend not to award that tuition assistance to people who have a practice, because I do think if you're seeing, if you have a business, then you should be able to budget to have some continuing education once a year. And I don't think my making that easy for you not to do is helpful for you in the long run. So I get a lot of requests and I do help out people, but I'm very specific about who and how. And it's usually for people who are, as I said, like working in a nonprofit capacity. Yeah. So in terms of tuition assistance, I really have two areas. I said one, but there are 2. And one is people who work for nonprofit, and one is people who are students. So they haven't started working yet, because as I said, I don't think if you have an active business and you're coming to me saying, "Oh, I can't afford your training," I'm like, well, you should probably invest in some business training or marketing training, so your business is at a place where you can afford to invest in continuing education in your subject matter area.
And a lot of businesses, and I did this as well in my fitness business, is looking at ways of giving scholarships as well. Instead of just discounting the price of the program, we still want the value to be there, but for somebody truly in need is, setting aside a few scholarships or, like you said, tuition assistance. So I think that's a really good compromise to help people that truly have the need and the desire they have need for the financial assistance, but they also have the desire to help people and go through the training. So I think that's a really good compromise to have.
Yeah. And for me, it's like, I think you're making a point, right? Like it's differentiating between the need and the I just can't afford it, right? Like if you just can't afford it, but you're running a business, then your priority right now should not be learning quantum biology. Your priority should be learning how to run your business so that you can afford the continuing education that you'd like to take.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Meredith, this has been just an amazing conversation. Thank you, listeners, for watching or listening to the show, depending on what platform you're on. I know we definitely appreciate it. We'll provide all of those links down into the show notes. That's pretty amazing. And if you could do me a solid favor and do what other smart and considerate listeners are doing and sharing this show with a friend or a loved one who could use the advice that we've shared on today's show. And until next time, lead with your heart.
You've been listening to the Heart-Led Business Show, hosted by Tom Jacobs. Join us next time for another inspiring journey into the heart of business.